we've never raced a Tour. Obviously, I understand you haven't raced a Tour, Dan, but you have raced at an extremely high level. I saw on Twitter the other day you suggested potentially increasing the weight limit. Do you think that riders are going too fast these days? And if so, is there anything meaningful that you could actually do to slow people down?
No, I don't think they're going too fast. I think any protagonist within the sport who proclaims speed is the problem either is trying to distract you from the actual problem or doesn't understand the problem. And the problem is unsafe roads, unsafe equipment, and poor, inadequate or slow medical response when the worst does happen. So by changing speed, you change the magnitude of the effect when a crash happens, but you don't actually, or in most scenarios, don't actually change whether a crash does or doesn't happen due to speed. That's predominantly course. Like if we look at all the major crashes, or the vast majority, it's either something's come out of nowhere, speed bump, road furniture, whatever it might be that riders weren't aware of, or a corner that was tighter, or there was diesel on the road, or remember back in the day when the caravan and opening stage of the Tour de France had it was like washing up liquid as a sponsor, and they had like a bubble machine and it ended up on the road, and you had Tony Martin just going crazy at the front, like let's just calm down. Just things like that. They're what cause crashes, not the rider's speed. And I think the reason it's gone down this argument of speed is to detract or to distract everybody and discuss the point of speed and to try and slow them down. Whereas realistically, and the harder and more expensive approach is to make safer courses. And then by extension, safer bikes and better medical interventions. And the better medical interventions are where is the rider, how fast they're traveling, what's their heart rate, have they hit their head, and have everything in there to rapidly respond. And a really good parallel is what happened in Formula One when Ayrton Senna died. Before there were a fair few drivers passing away, in Roland Ratzenberger that exact weekend. And it took the figurehead, like the highest profile driver in the sport, to die in an avoidable accident for the FIA to take action. And the action, yes, immediately was cut speeds, but actually in time it was intentional to create a car design that was consistent all the time, i.e. it didn't drastically change in grip through downforce very quickly, which was what was happening at that point in time. The car's bottomed out, the diffuser stalled, car washed out, hit a barrier really quickly, and then create circuits where there's enough runoff, there's gravel traps, and that they have systems and protocols in place that medical responses are quicker. And I think cycling's in the exact same situation, that it probably will take, and let's be honest, it's probably not even that far away, a significant profile rider having a life-changing or life-ending injury for this to happen. And we can either action it now or we can action it when that happens. And I know which I prefer to do. And I've had discussions with the UCI, and to give them their due, they are actually tackling this problem. They're not burying their heads in the sand, or at least the people that I've been speaking with, and the CPA and the AIGCP, exactly the same situation. They want to improve safety, but to discuss speed is detracting from the actual problem of we need safer, more consistent bikes where you can be at the limit of braking, be at the limit of grip and not crash, or you can crash your bike and it's still safe to ride. Much, much, much safer courses and better medical interventions. And that's what's going to stop these things from happening, not just being 5% slower. I don't know, that's a big rant, but I'm really passionate.
No, I think that's great. I mean, like, obviously you made the comparison between cycling and Formula One there. Obviously, one of the kind of big things that we've seen recently in Formula One is something like, the halo for the cars, which is kind of like a little, like essentially like a roll cage. Obviously, it's trickier with bikes because, what could we do to, make bikes safer, for example? As I say, you mentioned like, increasing the weight limit. Do you think that would allow a kind of greater factor of safety, for example?
Factor of safety in design, factor of safety in a lot of aspects as well. So even things like bottle cage retention. So a lot of crashes are caused by loose bottles in the peloton. They roll around and they're really heavy and they're not compressible. So bottle cages at the moment is one way you can really drive weight, and we've got them down to like 12 grams or something ridiculous. We'll just regulate them, make them 50 grams, which is easily achievable. And then the retention will go up, or we'll just have a clasp mechanism so they're locked in place. And I bet that would cut out 10, 20 crashes a year, just like pulling figures out of there. And I'm sure the UCI, or at least somebody safer, maybe have numbers on how many crashes are caused by things like that. And I think increasing the weight limit, it does a lot of other things. It enables you to carry those additional sensors, additional systems, have a safer bike around factors of safety, and just design the bikes that they are a bit more fit for purpose, because we are pushing factors of safety to get closer to 6.8, and that's just the necessity. We're having titanium bolts, we're hollowing out bolts, we're 3D printing everything. It's getting into an arms race so that people can be at 6.8 and not take a hit on performance. in the sense of like aerodynamics, because you want the bike to perform as well as it can, but at that limit, and it's just not a nice place to be. And most motorsport formula have a weight limit, even though they have a wealth of safety tests, like crash structures, everything else, but they have the weight limit so that you're not chasing it, because it's detrimental to the sport, which has happened last year in Formula One when, and I know I keep going about Formula One, I'm a big fan and that's my background, but cycling tends to be 10, 20, 30 years behind motorsport in general. But what happened is all the cars were too heavy, so they were stripping paint off. Well, okay, you've got 5 or 10 kilos back, but you've killed your sponsorship. So is that good for the sport? You get short-term performance but long-term loss, and we're in the exact same situation in cycling. You get short-term performance and long-term loss. And from a safety perspective, can you do other things? Can you have like the inflatable neck braces? Can you have higher crash safety tests on helmets? The helmet volumes are bigger, and maybe they're heavier, but actually they're better at absorbing crashes. There's like a lot of ideas and things that you can do, but they're mass. They take weight, and if weight is the target and you're nowhere near the limit, then people are never going to be incentivized to do it unless they're regulated to.
I think it doesn't really take a genius to think that if you increase the weight limit on a bike with the current carbon tech, you could quite easily put a lot of safety features within the frame that linked up to, say, a helmet.
Which you mean like kind of crash sensors or kind of like radio transmitters or something like that? That include that in the bike weight?
Even for heart health as well. I think there could be a lot of things.
So you saying you'd be in favour of raising the weight limit, would you?
This
it's not
hill
really a problem
climb...
for you, UCI weight limit though, is it? No one's checking your bike these days.
Funnily enough, no. I think it would be a good thing.
Yeah,
I think it would absolutely kill climbing bikes in the full market, and my ethos would be even more obsolete than it currently is. But yeah, I'm not going to.
Well,
say
it has a place. I don't think it's really in the UCI world. I think that is like this is what we really could do if you really push it. And from an engineering perspective, I enjoy that as a challenge. I like, what can we really do? But from a performance perspective, then the trade-off isn't particularly there. That you're losing out so much more on the aerodynamics because you're trying to create a super light, stiff structure, not a fast aero structure, which the vast majority of people, at least in most scenarios, need. Okay, like we said earlier, caveat, there's people trying to race really fast up hills and there's a time and place for it, and that is really where it wins out. But yeah, it'd be nice to have that additional mass because you could do so much more with it, and people wouldn't be trying to like swap out or take off the Velon boxes and things like that. They'd be like, well, who cares? Because I've got another 500 grams to spare, so you can have onboard cameras, you can have all the onboard telemetry. Like in Formula One. Geez, I'm sorry, I'm
don't worry, I like Formula One too.
Yeah,
I love it.
I was watching it.
Yeah,
but you can watch a race and you can pick all 20 drivers and have onboard of exactly what's going on with a 360 camera and all the live telemetry. Like, how cool is that? And that's what the next generation are genuinely interested in. That's what excites them, and that's what the direction that I believe personally we have to go in as a sport.
Always fascinating to hear from Dan. And of course, as always, if you have any thoughts, comments or feedback, you can email us at podcast@bikeradar.com. Otherwise, Liam, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.